topics to discuss tonight. First one is the marijuana ordinance amendment discussion. If we so choose, and then we just want to do the next. So open it up. One, if there's any desire to revisit the ordinance.
I think people spoke in 2018.
Yeah, I was actually surprised at how close that was. When I saw that from Mike, I was like, wow, that's much closer than I expected in 2018. All I can say is I've been approached by a number of members in the community, and there's a lot of support for it. They see it as a business opportunity and revitalize a piece of property that has been sitting vacant or unused for a number of years. I didn't really hear from anyone that had any like real issues with it, so I'd be amenable to opening it up. But if nothing else, I think it should probably go back to a vote to the villagers in 2024. At the very least, they spoke in 2024, they can speak again in 2018, speak again in 2024. And
I think that's the right way to do it.
I would agree. Yeah.
all right, so before I close this discussion, any other words we want to bring to the table? I'm not hearing anything that.
Yes, I had a resident approach me as well, and just wanted to make this statement because I told her that I would. She said that she was not opposed to the marijuana dispensary, but her concern was if she spoke at the meeting at the podium, that she wasn't sure it was going to be printed in a paper. She did, and she did not want her words to be taken askew, and so she felt that she had to reach out to council to get her thoughts known. She asked if I would say that, and I told her that I would. So I am saying that.
All right. So I'm not hearing from any council member that they'd be up to making a motion in future meeting. So sort of the sentiment I'm getting.
Do we have to make a motion regarding putting it on to the ballot for the 2024 year?
That's a good question.
That was gonna be what I asked, if you guys wanted me to look into that process and get that table. I don't know, I didn't prepare anything for today. I was really just hoping that you guys tonight would just let me know if there was anything you wanted me to prepare and provide to you, or what the next steps are.
Yeah, I think
So
that's probably.
I would imagine there would have to be some formal motion. It would not be tonight, obviously, as this is a committee of the whole, but I'll look into that process and report back to you guys and let you know what it is.
I would like you to do.
Personally, I think it would make sense to wait until mid of November after Ohio does their ballot initiative and see how that goes, because I think that's going to dictate a lot of what
Good point.
potentially happens with the Michigan dispensary.
Are there any, I didn't read through the entire ordinance and how all of its. I forget how many pages there were, but anyways, are there restrictions regarding those type of facilities as being adjacent to a public park? And that type of thing, because we have a public park right behind it. I know that was one of the issues with that property prior to a few years ago.
To be honest, since we are, we've exempted ourselves from allowing it, I've not familiarized myself with that. Again, I didn't want to spend a ton of time doing research and looking into it if you guys were going to say we're not doing it. So that's something I can look into and let you know. I know another person asked me that same question, and I just don't want to tell you wrong. I'm not sure. And then our local zoning ordinance, if it were allowed, would dictate which zone and where it would be allowed as well, because we do have some local authorities.
So I just did a quick search. Possession of any amount within 1,000 feet of a park is not permitted under the state law. But it doesn't say anything about the actual dispensary.
Well, you'd be in possession. Leave
Right.
the dispensary though.
Right. That's true.
That's the way I understand it.
Yeah, that's how I would.
When could I ask you, this person that
spoke to you, what do they feel like the advance would say something different than what they say here?
They felt that their words would not be portrayed accurately or would be portrayed as you remember the gentleman that spoke to us, you guys, and was upset about his address or his time being gone? Okay, so she did not want something like that to be said if she spoke in favor of this. She felt that because of some of the things that have been on Facebook, on social media, that she would be
Targeted.
yes, thank you. That might be a good word to use. These are her thoughts. Yes. And again, I just I asked her, would you like me to state this, or and she said, I would very much so. So that is what I do. So I guess one of the things that sometimes when people say about coming to speak to us at the podium, yes, it does take courage, and it's not always the easiest thing to do, but sometimes the easiest thing is because you never know what's going to be printed. And that was her concern.
I must run in a little different circles than James, because everybody that I talk to, from B-Town to Coney Island, to McDonald's and a couple other places where people happen to stop me, said that they were not in favor of any type of marijuana facility in the village. They said, what's the reason behind it? We have several of them in Adrian that are up there already. If Ohio legalizes it, they're gonna be that much closer to Ohio. That Ohio business is not gonna come up here. I took an opportunity to drive through Morenci a week and a half ago on a Saturday afternoon, and there is 5 dispensaries over there. And there is virtually no business in that town whatsoever, other than dispensaries and a gas station, a couple gas stations.
Yeah, they enjoyed it first to market windfall. They developed quite a healthy Ohio business as a result.
And if the Ohio if that does pass down there, then chances are they're gonna see a decline in their business, because I'm sure that they'll open up Wasion, Swanton,
Toledo,
wherever.
Toledo, people will just stay in Toledo. But it's not really up to us to pick winners and losers. It's not our reward. So.
But we do have a say as far as ballot, correct?
I'm not sure, and I know you can do a signature ballot initiative as well.
Someone could petition to have it put on the ballot again.
I can get some more information. For
Well,
you guys regarding what that
Well,
would entail.
Got signatures, I can get it on there.
the next morning after that meeting, I got a phone call from a resident, said, what is going on down there? So the ones I've talked to are not in favor of it as far as a resident. And then I think even as our administrator, it's not recommended it either. Is that okay if I say that, Danielle?
Yeah, I shared that in my
Okay, you
weekly
did.
summary with you guys.
Well, I certainly appreciate everybody doing their due diligence on it. We had some contentious meetings with budget negotiations and then passing the budget with the library not being fully funded. And so for us not to look at an alternative revenue source, I think would be somewhat hypocritical. So I'm glad this is a democratic process. This is what, this is why I said, let's come back in 2 weeks. Let's go out, talk to people, get informed about it.
You mean you didn't just talk to your people, James?
I was surprised at the demographics though. Leading demographics of users of marijuana are white Americans 55 and up. Next largest demographic, white Americans 45 and up, and third largest demographic is 35 to 45 white Americans. So yeah, the marijuana boogeyman that was portrayed on Facebook and other social media just doesn't really exist. So it sort of boggles my mind as to why people are so afraid of it, but I'm not hearing any support for it. So let's let's look into it for a ballot and then let's move on to the wastewater treatment plant if no one has anything else. All right, so Nora, welcome.
Hello, you got all dressed up for us, Nora? Thank you.
No, I was running here from 4 other meetings. So we're gonna talk about, the sludge building and where we've been with that. First we gotta start with, what is sludge? This is sludge. As we talk, you'll see it's gonna separate and settle out. So this is our waste from the water treatment plant. So that's organic materials from the river, that's chemicals that we add for treatment. What happens in the settling is that this falls out, we pump it out right now into a holding tank, and from that holding tank right now, it's going to the wastewater treatment plant. So that's kind of just what we're talking about. So the history of our sludge building. Up until October of 2012, the waste, so our sludge was always sent over to the wastewater treatment. In October of 2012 is when we opened the sludge facility at the water treatment plant, when we started processing. And that ran until about November of 21. The water treatment plant, we did the wastewater or the dewatering of the sludge through a centrifuge, which we bought from CBB Decanter, which was out of Italy. That's a good note to keep. And a few things to point out right now. The project never met parameters when it was handed over to Blissfield. It was supposed to be able to discharge the water back to the river. Never passed Eagle's requirements for that. So during the processing, the water has always gone to the wastewater treatment plant.
This since 2012.
Set forever. Yep.
Okay.
Everything. So before 2012, everything went.
Yep.
After 2012, what we could separate from this water-wise, and then also polymer, which is the chemical that we're feeding to help coagulate and separate this, was also going. So that always went to wastewater treatment plant. Like I said, Italian. So we saw a lot of cost increases with this process. Repairs and supplies were very expensive. We had to order directly from them. So downtime was long. And we had to wait for customs, which at that point was, this would have been about $800.
Why did we go with it then?
I
can tell you why, because it was when we were in discussions with BioDry and those gentlemen were trying to create something, we're trying to build a business. Unfortunately, obviously, it didn't happen. And at the time, we were looking for new solutions or solutions to try to dewater and try to quit sending so much waste and so much sludge from the water treatment process down to the wastewater plant. So what those gentlemen did, they were sort of looking at a new technology, and we looked at a centrifuge, which we looked at a screw press, which is what we probably should have done. But that was just their design that the engineers came up with and provided to us. So it did actually do its job to an extent, because we did use dumpsters of sludge.
We could separate, yes,
in their material, which was hauled out. So we did send less to the wastewater.
yes, we sent less.
Next, Nora, how does the stuff get from water treatment down to the wastewater?
That's my next step.
Okay.
Okay, so aside from the cost of it being Italian, we also had things like you couldn't replace a screw or a bolt because it's metric. So we had to get those special. And motors in Italy run on 50 hertz, not 60 hertz, which is American based. So we're running things a little off kilter than where they should be. So that's why we see a lot of the repair things we had, because it didn't really work to what we needed. So the sludge process. The sludge is drained from the clarifiers. For those who've been to the water plant, those big pools of water when you go upstairs, those are your clarifiers. That's where your settling happens. Those are ran on timers. So when this stuff settles, if you can see it's already getting light on top, it's starting to settle. When that settles out, there's like a sump in the bottom, and on a timer, it'll take that and dump out your waste. That goes over to a holding tank. And from the holding tank, I can either, one, when it's running, send it through the sludge building, or two, it gets pumped out directly to the sanitary sewer into the wastewater treatment plant. So when we were running the sludge building, what would happen is we would pump, and sludge is not the only thing that is considered waste at the water plant. When I backwash a filter, that water that's used as a backwash also goes in this chamber. So that's gonna cut your solids down a lot, which makes it more difficult to run it through a process, because you don't have stuff there to make a solid. Also, when we run our nitrate exchanger system, which happens frequently seasonally, depending on rain and farming, you will get a brine solution that also goes there. The brine is very destructive to our polymer, so therefore you cannot use the system at all if I'm treating for nitrate. The brine will completely eat the polymer away, and we're paying about $1,000 a barrel for polymer. So it's better just to not run that process if we're running nitrate treatment. That's going to be the same anytime we use polymer. The brine salt pollution is going to eat up your polymer. So we wouldn't run it when the brine was running. So when it's running through the sludge building, the sludge would be pumped from that holding tank. It'd get a dose of polymer, and at that time, it's going to coagulate. So basically, it's going to clump up. We want to see floaty clumps of this in the water so that we can separate it from the water. So like I said, in 2019, a barrel of polymer was costing us $1,000 a barrel. And that lasts us about a week and a half. 2019, yeah. $1,000 a barrel, and that would last us about a week and a half. Now the mixture of sludge and polymer would then mix for a while to create a strong flock. The flock would then be fed from the mixing tank where it sat for sometimes hours, depending on how much sludge we had. That would be then sent to the centrifuge where it was dosed again with a little bit of polymer. The centrifuge would then spin at very high rates, which then would separate your solids from your water. And essentially, if everything was good, liquids would go down the drain to the wastewater treatment plant. And the solids would come up an auger that would then dispense into a dumpster. The dumpsters would then be picked up and land applied. Our waste always went towards Detroit. And like I said, if the exchanger is running, we wouldn't run the process at all, because there would just not be enough solids at that point. So from there, our second option, if the sludge building wasn't working or we were running the nitrate exchanger, we would just send that directly to the sanitary sewer. So it would go directly to the wastewater treatment plant. So issues or concerns with both sides. Brent and I did sit down and talk, since he has actually gone at training. So we talked through even things that were happening on the collection side that he saw. As of today, the centrifuge has been inoperable for 2 years. So for the last 2 years, we've been sending it to the wastewater treatment plant. In the 9 years that the process did run, we spent over $80,000 on repairs, and that was never budgeted for. In November of 21, we were basically shot out of the water when the hydraulic actuator blew. We had just redone all of the hydraulic hoses and everything on the centrifuge ourselves. We started it up, it lasted a day and a half, and the actual motor blew. That is not anything I could get sourced out, because again, it's Italian. And it had to fit to that centrifuge. So at that point, we were pretty much shot out of the water. There was still a laundry list of things that if we wanted to start up the actual facility that we have now, we would have to fix. And I don't have prices on those, because that would not be my recommendation to start back up what we have, because it was never correct to process our material. So the budget, though, outside of that $80,000 in 9 years, the budget for operating that building was an additional $66,600. That was chemicals, your dumpsters left at about 1,500 every time they got pulled, and they got pulled about every week and a half to 2 weeks. Dumpster liners, we had to have special testing on the materials in the dumpster, so we also had to take that for testing. Which I would take to Toledo, where we would do different testing on it to make sure that it was safe to be on the roads. And then that doesn't even factor in how often your operators were over there working on it, your electricity, because it's very energy expensive. Use a lot of water also to treat, which was also not factored in. Talking with Brent, when I would send it where it went through the sludge building and I added all that polymer, running that process, we had to get Vacker jet trucks to clean out our lines all the time, because polymer, like I said, just kind of wants to cling. It's like maple syrup, it clings to it. It makes big lumps, so when I send it down the sanitary sewer, you can only imagine everything it's grabbing as it goes. So it just kind of creates a big monster in there that they have to vac or jet out. So we did that a lot. It also would mess up their lift stations. On the other hand, when I'm directly feeding it like we are now, the ferric, which is our chemical we use at the water plant for coagulation, eats up the impellers on the lift station. So really for Brent, it's a no-win situation. He's dealing with one or the other. So for us, we were going, what's next? What do I do? Are we going to keep sending it there? So I kept you guys pretty updated in my monthly meetings or my monthly updates. Beginning in May, I started speaking with Pete and Jake from Donut Area on what their first steps should be. Myself and Randy then met with them and what Randy thought the plant could do. And at that point, we still weren't, the new plant wasn't really up and running or anything. The next steps is kind of, is it better to spend that money at the water plant, continue what we're doing, or is it better to look at that future and spend that money at the wastewater plant and make sure it can handle that? I'm open with, you want me to do it there, I can do it there. So we received some recommendations. We got some sludge samples taken, which I'll have the engineers talk to you guys about, that we received those samples in July. And we came up with an option. And then do we want to move on with pilot studies, or is it something that the council wants to look at treating at the wastewater plant side? So that's kind of where we're looking for direction onto where do we want to actually treat this process. So, any questions from that perspective? No? Okay.
I would say taking a step back, Nora, the whole reason behind all of that was, I would say, a multitude of factors. It's, you know, a lot of people like to bash the previous boards and administration and whatnot on the decisions that we made, but what it boils down to is probably 2008, the start of the ethanol plant, and the production of a lot more water and a lot more water coming back. So, you know, council administration and engineering back then, much like Nora alluded to, we have a very bad raw water source. It's a challenge to start at the cleaning process there. We drew out a lot of sludge, which we did send to the wastewater plant. So we had a compound of issues. We were hauling a lot of sludge out of the oxidation ditches there because they were filling up, which cost a ton of money. We were dealing with capacity ratings because of the age of the water treatment plant and Eagle or the DNR, whatever they were back at the time, in our capacities and our allowance to grow as a village and how much water we could treat. We had ammonia issues at the wastewater treatment plant. We had, you know, a multitude of things. So again, the solution was, instead of sending all of that down to the wastewater treatment plant, the engineers at the time said, let's get some of those solids out at the water treatment process, rather than sending it all down to the wastewater treatment plant where we're compounding the issues down there. So that, I think, was the original intent with BioDry, with the centrifuge solution, whatnot, and they were supposed to maintain that. The problem is that business went bust, didn't happen. So then again, that trial phase of that trial investment didn't work out to the extent that it should have. But again, you know, back in the day, again, hindsight, of course, you think that ethanol plant is going to be a big boom for us because, you know, we're going to produce a lot more water, but what that, you know, entailed was more staff, more wear and tear on the plants, things like that. So it's not just one tangible which affects things. It's a bunch that just kind of affected down the line. And I guess, you know, we've done a lot of studies, we've done a lot of plans, we've done a lot of, you know, ideas on what we want to do. My questions go back to alum from ferric sulfate. That's what we changed to, right? And I think that compounded a lot of our sludge issues in the past.
They're two different, very different materials. However, we cannot meet state requirements feeding alum. We cannot feed enough alum. So we, at the water plant, had to change to ferric sulfate. I don't know, Brett and I didn't talk about what they saw with alum. That was even before I got here 15 years ago, they switched. So it's a different kind of waste. But like I said, I don't know what, you know, collections on that side. They never had to treat any of that. They just sent to the wastewater treatment plant. Now you can ask Steve, when you talk to him, but ferric and polymer are both used at wastewater treatment plants. So that you guys can talk to him and kind of see how that helps him or doesn't help him either way, but that's, so alum, you can use that a little, but you usually feed ferric, but, so that's something you guys can talk to him too about how what I'm sending helps or doesn't help him, so.
And I guess that would be the question is, does the new wastewater treatment plant, did the engineers, did Pogemeyer plan say, okay, we're gonna send more waste down to you, or are we gonna revisit the cleaning process at the treatment stage and do something with the sludge building? So I guess that would be the ultimate question, probably.
That's what the whole discussion is.
Yeah, correct. Correct. Any questions for me before I let Steve come up?
Is that, I do have a question, before you pick that up.
You hit that there.
Is it about a 40 to 50% settling? And if you put
It
a
just
thousand,
depends what's happening in the river. Right now, our turbidity is very low. So we don't have a lot of stuff coming in organic. So right now, most of our, this is not like from today. This is when I usually take to school and stuff with me, so.
You just keep a bottle around.
I do, I'm a big dork. So this one has a lot more organics. So normally, right now it would look more orange because you'd have a little bit more ferric in it. But it just depends what we have coming in. In the spring, you're gonna have way more material than right now when it's been a little, you know, I would like to say dry, but the weekend was not. But so it just depends seasonally, it changes a lot, so. Yeah. I will leave it there so you guys can get it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Nora.
You're welcome.
All right. I didn't get dressed up when for. This one.
I wasn't gonna say anything, I was just gonna let it go by.
That's what.
Don't make sure Steve.
For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Shields. I'm the youth supervisor at the wastewater treatment plant. As Nora says, the normal processing that I've ever been affiliated with, and I've been doing water for 41 years. So I've been in different plants, small, large, etc. It's either a ferric or polymer is a coagulant or alum is a coagulant. It helps it settle out. Ferric is good in terms of taking phosphorus out, which was one of the main things pushing the changes to the plant was the high ferric content that was going out to the river. So yeah, it does help. I was told that some years ago there were studies done on what was actually coming into the wastewater plant. I'm not privy to that information yet. I'd like to see if I can find that out to see what actually comes in there versus anywhere I've ever been, they feed ferric, and I was surprised when I got to this plant that they feed no chemicals, no ferric, no polymers, no anything. It's like there are improvements that can be made to this plant that will even make it better yet in terms of that. But like I say, I'm kind of coming in on the back door here. I guess I'll get the information from the engineers. I think they've had some studies done or looking at different options down there to see which works best. So I will defer to them. I was asked to speak today on the new lab building that we would like to have built. The lab building was originally part of the updates that was supposed to be into this plan, but as a cost cutting measure, it was cut out of the budget. And as you know, I think everybody knows that prices don't go down. It's gone up significantly. So original 5.2 million plant that was costing us 7.2, 7.8, whatever. And now we're gonna add on something that is going to be considerably more. The current wastewater lab building is the original one, built in 1957. The structure itself, walls, etc., are actually in good shape. I know that it was talked about before of blowing the building down and building one in different sites. I would like to look at a couple different options as well, with the exception of the roofing that has issues on it. I would ask for a structural engineer to kind of look at that and see what their options are on there, and then gable the roof on that one. Looked at several different options as well, to come off either the east or west side for an addition, because currently right now the cabinets in there, they're pretty much non-existent. There's holes in the flooring. We've got 3/4 plywood in there to keep from things falling through the floor. We have a building of that age. When they built those, they had electrical in there for very minimal things, maybe a drying oven, maybe a scale, etc. Now you have so much more equipment that require electrical uses. Why I would say to keep the old building at least structure and then look at helping that as well as adding on one way or the other is that we just put in all new electrical panels for running some pumps. So I think we already have the electricity there. We already have a water source coming in there. We already have a sewer coming in there. It's just a matter, in my opinion, of doing some cleanup on the place, which we have started doing quite a bit of that, and revamping the old structure to meet the demands we have. As I say, I would look or would like to see coming off either the east or the west of that current building, maybe a 30 by 30 or 30 by 40, which would work best, because currently right now we have no bathroom facilities in there. We have no showers in there anywhere I've ever worked. Anybody who deals with that sort of process, if you get, you're going to eventually get into pumps and sprayed with stuff that you don't want to, and you don't want to take that home to your family. We have no eating facilities in there. We are, imagine if you would, going into your bathroom and cooking your dinner and eating in there. So that's kind of what we do on a daily basis. One of the buildings that we had our UVs in, we looked at possibly putting a lab in there, but the way that the VFDs are set up in there, that kind of eliminates that as a possibility. So there's a lot of possibilities of being able to add on to the current building. I think that would be a better idea from the standpoint if we put a building out closer to the drying beds or further back. Now you're running utilities all the way out there, and you're off site, and you could potentially hinder future operations that you might need at the wastewater plant for looking at possibly down the road, another sludge holding sludge holding process down there, the same size as we have on the other one, or any other possibilities that the village may want to put buildings down there that might help out.
So you're being proactive, Steve.
I'm trying. I'm looking, like say, one of the, I won't mention the contractor, but one of the contractors we had was one of the only things that he said that made sense to me, and that was to go out either side of that building there, because as we discussed, everything is really right there. And if our previous engineers, I won't go there anyway. They've done their homework, then a lot of this could have been, I think, averted. There was a lot of unhappy results of what was done there, or lack of results. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at, and I guess from this standpoint, for me personally, I will not try to use the word never ask you for anything that we don't need. This is something that not only that you see the state regulations and stringencies getting tighter and tighter all the time. This will make it a place that when you walk in the door at the wastewater plant or the lab or whatever, unlike when I got there, I have heard that so many people walked in the door and turned around and walked out the door. I would like to have a place to be when people come in there, you're gonna have to turn them away. Because you'll have so many people that, like, hey, this is where I wanna be. I've seen some really nice facilities in my time. I've worked in some really nice ones. And I think we can get there, and I think, with the right, working together and everything, and the right engineering company. We can make it something to be proud of, so. So, as I say, any questions on that?
No,
All right,
not right now. Thanks, Steve.
all right, very good, thank you.
You guys want to present, or do you want me to kind of lay some groundwork, or? So I guess I'm gonna let them take over. I don't really have too much. So I know that Nora and Steve just talked about two very different projects. And you're probably wondering why they're both kind of being presented at the same time. These are both things that we've been working with the engineers on. And we're trying to do a better job of looking into the future and preparing for what we need. So we anticipate that these are going to start off as two individual projects with the engineers. But at some point, because they are somewhat contingent, whatever is determined at the sludge building, that water potentially impacts or does impact the wastewater treatment plant. So while we anticipate that these are kind of two individual projects, at some point they're going to kind of intersect and to come together. And that's why we wanted to talk to you about both of these tonight. We eventually would like to get to the point where I have a cost estimate for this work from the engineers, but we thought that this meeting would be a really good idea just to be able to hear some feedback from you guys on your goals and what you're looking for. I'll let the engineers specifically talk about maybe kind of their ideas as far as scope of work or what they're looking at right now, but then would definitely recommend Nora, Steve, and you guys to just give them some feedback so that they can give us the most accurate proposal to move forward on these items. But definitely if you have questions, let us know and I'll turn it over to you guys. Thanks for coming. And I guess does everybody, I know Todd's been here before.
Give us a reminder if you would.
Yeah, so I'm Pete Ladd with Jones and Henry Engineers, and Lucas Hall is here with me. So, Nora, that's a tough act to follow there. So what Nora and Steve have talked about is a problem or a perceived problem at both your water and wastewater plant. What I'm here to talk about is the solution to that, okay? And the solution needs to be broke down in multiple stages. So let's first start with Nora's sludge problem, okay? We have already taken some samples of the sludge and sent it to one equipment manufacturer. And that's, actually they came out and did a pilot, didn't they?
They're not yet.
Okay, so yeah, we took the sample and sent it to the manufacturer, and they run analyses on that sludge to see how it will perform with their equipment. And so far, the tentative results that we've gotten back are positive, meaning that it looks like their equipment will dewater the material that is coming off of your guys' water plant. Okay, so why is that important? That is important because you want to make sure that the next piece of equipment you put in works. So the whole goal to making sure that it works is to do what's called pilot studies, which is you get that manufacturer to bring a piece of machinery out here and you set it up and you run it for a week, couple days, a month, whatever you can get out of them. So in that time, what they'll do is they will try different chemicals that work with their machine in order to enhance the process of settling out and removing the solids. And as part of that pilot study, then you'll get a bunch of data that will help you analyze what the performance was, how successful it was, which allows you to then look at what enhancements can be added onto the plant. So that machine, what chemical process goes with that machine, and that's all the engineering aspect of it. So that is the first part of looking at the solution for the dewatering at the plant. We would write that up in a report, bring it to you or to the village and present it as options that will solve the problem. I think that's, yeah. So from there, you'll have the option of then selecting what process you want to go forward with, if any, and how you want to implement those in order to address the solids problem at the water plant. We will look at a lot of different things, such as utilizing the existing building as much as possible, utilizing the existing equipment where possible and when possible. The reality is some of the equipment may not be able to be reutilized. So, but as part of the study, that's what we will analyze is how much of that process and stuff that you've already invested in can we recapture and try to utilize. So to try to economize and maximize the benefit. You want me to talk about the reliability study? Okay. At the wastewater plant. So any questions on that?
No, so you're in extremely early preliminary.
Yes. Yeah, so we're still in what we would call the study phase.
Okay.
So we would enter the study phase.
You need water?
No, it's my allergies, sorry. It's a terrible time of the year.
Just have little bottles of water.
Yeah. So we're in the study phase. We would go through the study phase, and then after you make your decision, we would go through the design phase. And then we'd go through the construction phase and implementation. Okay, so, yeah.
So I guess the other question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So our question was at this point, before we move on, is it something you guys want to keep doing at the water plant? Do you want to see us treat it there, or do you think it's something that we still continue what we're doing essentially with our plant? Is there something we need to add there to better treat everything coming in? So that's what we're asking you is, do you want us to continue moving forward and trying to do water at the water treatment plant? Again, maybe I didn't make that clear in the beginning. Or do you want us to maybe move that process with some of Steve's upgrades he wants to do? And that's something you have to talk to him too. Like I said, Brent, he had issues with his collection system either way. So it's kind of like.
Isn't that something that would be reviewed
They can.
in the study?
Well, they're looking at equipment. So they're looking at, is it something you want to do at the water plant? Then here's your options on how to treat it at the water plant. If it's not something you want to do at the water plant, then here's what we can do at the wastewater plant, because they're going to be kind of separate. So
I
that's,
guess I would like to see something laid out, pros and cons of both ways, something that I can dive into.
Mhm.
And I just don't feel like I have enough information at this point.
So Nora, if we were to fully move this process to the wastewater treatment plant, what would become of the sludge building at the water treatment plant?
and that's something that it could be used for DPW facilities if they want, because there would be things in there that we may be able to use at the wastewater plant, or we can, try to sell.
That building then be completely removed from water treatment.
I wouldn't need it for anything. Right now, it's not being used for anything but for me to push a button and send it to Steve. So I would not use that building at all. So that's something that you could use elsewhere in the.
It's obviously about cost effective.
Exactly.
That's what it boils down to.
Exactly.
Is there a solution? Again, we're talking about a crappy raw water source. And, again, we're looking at re-rating the wastewater treatment plant. So, that's gonna have something to do with it. Again, we've talked about adding a clarifier out there or?
Oh, yeah, we had to clarify. Yeah, I think it would depend on her. I don't, like I say, I'm kind of getting in the back door here. But our headworks building is for rags and grit removal, not sludge. This is a whole different ballgame. So you would have to find studies on whether or not the sludge removal would hamper the water.
Exactly, because we've dealt with issues of, again, much like Nora said, it's expensive to haul that. The inner dirt, whatever we want to call it, out of there, those dumpsters filled up, and I was shocked because we had no idea how much it was gonna cost and how fast it was gonna fill. And we had to dispose of them properly, they couldn't just be land applied or whatever. So that, you're right, that was expensive, but also then if we're sending it all down to the wastewater treatment plant, we compound the issue of those tanks filling, and we're emptying sludge more often, or we're paying to dispose of that sludge as well. So it's really a double-edged sword. It's what's gonna be the cheapest solution. If that building's out there that we could utilize for something, heck yeah, DPW can always utilize it, because we got stuff sitting in the old pool. But again, I would like to see both cost factors, what's gonna be the best and most efficient for us. If we rated that wastewater treatment plant to handle more processing, and allow that on top of future growth as well, then maybe that's the solution. But again, I think we should probably see both.
What in your, what do you normally see? What's the split for treatment, sludge treatment?
Normally, you would try to treat that sludge at its point source.
Right.
So you would try to treat that at the water plant.
Yeah.
Because as Nora mentioned, when you send it down the sewers, you're clogging it up in the sewers, you're sending it through your pumps in your collection system. You saw how fast this settled sitting here. You look at your travel time from the water plant to the wastewater plant through the sewers, and that's gonna happen in your sewers.
So that's not going through some special avenue, that's just going out to the general sewer and flowing all household exhausted waste down to the wastewater treatment plant. Right, it's not taking its own highway.
No pens.
Yeah,
Crap
exactly,
is all flowing downhill.
yeah. Okay,
Some of it's not funny.
And that's what
Yes.
we've talked about, issues with the sanitaries as well, Beagle or Beamer Road and.
so you're pretty familiar with what we have in there now. What, just overall estimation, what do you think is usable, not usable? How far off are we in the process? Just ballpark.
The building is functional.
Okay.
There's a few tanks in there. There's a chemical system that's in there that could probably be utilized. Chemical pumps are chemical pumps.
Two of those pumps are bad right now. They're
Yeah.
one of the 8 things that we would have a laundry and stuff, so there would be some new pumps.
So I mean, there's also wear and tear on the equipment, so but yeah, you're looking at a new dewatering equipment.
Okay.
So it's not like you're gonna have to put in, the dewatering equipment would be relatively the similar size. So it's not like you're looking at like adding on to the building and doubling the size of the building and facilities like that. So really what you're looking at is changing out the process, changing out the equipment, and putting in the support equipment, which I believe would all fit inside of that building.
Okay.
Where you're saving a lot of money to do that out there is the building. Okay, so I mean, yes, equipment is very expensive, but if you were starting from scratch, that type of capital project would have the foundations, the tank, the building, all of the equipment, electrical, mechanical.
Which is guaranteed.
That is all there, correct? You've already got HVAC, you've already got electrical, you've already got power feeds out there. So really what you're looking at is the process equipment exactly.
And then from there, you'd have a return to the river.
No.
And so none of that,
This clear liquid on top
yeah,
would be discharged from that dewatering press to the sewer
okay,
to the wastewater plant.
But it would be cleared out all the.
But it's, right, it's the clear.
Clear portion only that would be making its way down.
and then Steve, that's something that our current wastewater treatment plant is set up to take and handle.
I would have to defer and just have get more information on that,
Okay.
because currently. My opinion at this point is. We have skating going in right now, as you guys are aware. And our current skate assist, our current flow meter reads is 0 to 2 MGD, which are reported on your state reports. They're gonna update that to 0 to 4, so we're running somewhere between 4 and 5 in the spring, 4 and 5 million gallons through a plant that's rated at 900,000 gallons. So you guys do the math on that. When you start getting that, you're not meeting your state regulations.
So how do we meet it?
You don't. You don't. When in the springtime, this year, we were kind of lucky because it wasn't as wet, as much coming through there. I know one of the things that they had recommended, a possible third ditch out there to handle more solids. Because
That's the
when
oxidation thing?
oxidation, just, yeah.
Okay.
So in other words, when you get an flux, which either the river running through or high flow is coming through, you're watching everything on, yeah, there's nothing you can do about it at that point. That's
But you're already getting the liquid amount of that coming through the lines right now, correct?
all right, that's a whole different story. Sludge versus, where you're at right now, and now you're gonna add to that. You're just adding two additional problems there.
Well, you're saying we're 9 million, right, or 900,000 gallons, right, we're rated at right now,
Right.
but the whole point. In updating and rebuilding that was we were gonna go back to Eagle and we're gonna re-rate that plant for new capacity, correct?
I don't know.
If we spent 7.2 million and we don't get a higher rating. I'm just my mind,
That's something, like I say, that's gonna be an Eagle thing right there, once again.
because that was the whole intent. I mean, that's why we work with engineers. We were adamant that we had to re-rate the facility in order to grow the town, in order to have supply and demand happen. If we can't get a higher rating,
That's something like I say,
there's a major problem.
So regardless of whether or not we make the upgrades at the water treatment plant, we still have to look at potential solutions at the wastewater treatment plant.
down the road, I would say.
Gotcha. Plus the lab. Plus the lab.
If we address the issues at the water treatment plant as the source to get rid of the sludge out there, that to me would make more sense, that it would alleviate some of the stress that's on the wastewater treatment plant to take care of that system. Plus the whole system that it has to flow down and out through to get to the other side of town.
Yes,
And it's a cleaner product coming into the wastewater treatment plant, and we're having the issues with the levels, the ammonia, the phosphate. Or phosphorus, correct, that kind of stuff. Hopefully that would help fix this.
And then what would be like the efficiency? So we're looking at this bottle right now and it is settled probably 20-30%, right? Is that something that this process would, like, would that much water be flowing to the wastewater treatment plant as a result of the process? Okay.
yeah,
Okay, it is, right?
it's physical matter, you can't create or destroy it, so.
Yeah, it's all going there now, it just would be clear instead of turning around like when Nora first put it up there.
Well, that
The other thing too is the dewatering equipment also will enhance this. So while this is just natural settling, this is what's occurring, for example, in like your clarifiers and some of your other tanks.
Okay.
What the dewatering equipment is going to do is it's going to take this volume, the sludge volume, and it's going to remove as much water as it possibly can from that volume. And by reducing that volume, so when you have sludge, whether it's water or wastewater, when you have sludge and you're going to haul it to landfill, it has a certain amount of water. You don't want to pay to haul water to a landfill. That's what you're doing. So by dewatering it, the water is very heavy. So you're dewatering it to get it down to a dry state so that it's like sand on a beach. You'll never get there. But that's what you want. You want to remove all that water, which is excess weight, which reduces cost when you go to the landfill. So it's taking the volume of sludge here and removing even more water out of it, not just this portion up here.
Oh, and Nora had alluded to it in the beginning that bio dryer or whatever they were at the time, we're gonna discharge it back to the water river, back to the river at the wastewater or at the wet water treatment plant level. And you're saying that's not gonna happen regardless. Because you said it didn't happen with our centrifuge, and you're still saying it's not gonna happen with any kind of process there. It's not gonna be able to be discharged. It's gonna have to go through the sewer system and go through the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, you're likely not gonna get an NPDS permit to discharge that, not to mention it's another NPDS, it's more regulation on you. You're better off to send that down to the wastewater plant and deal with it down there.
NPDS is,
NPDS is the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. It's your permit that
I
allows
figured it
you
was
to
something,
discharge. to the
something
river.
along that line.
Yeah,
Nora or Steve, either or Danielle, do we still have a problem with storm sewer still being mixed into our sanitary sewers
Yes.
from several
Yes.
projects that haven't been done
Which
yet?
does impact the wastewater treatment plant significantly. Because we do have a lot of people connected, and my understanding is the village did smoke testing, I think it was back in 2007.
Mhm.
I think, don't quote me on the year.
It's independent, so it's not like streets combined. Those are fixed. We have our separation project of our storm and sanitary. It's tie-ins from private
Correct, yes,
residences and businesses.
and I think they had a,
Our
yeah.
separation.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Mine are capped.
So Brent and I, we're actually working on that as kind of another thing too, because we want to try to get some education out to the residents. Because we want them to understand that when they're tied in and they don't separate their storm sewer, eventually they're gonna cost themselves more money because somebody's gotta pay for any upgrades out at the wastewater treatment plant, so we need them to understand the importance of separating. And then we're talking to Michigan Rural Water about helping us do some fog testing or smoke testing again as well. But yes, it is an issue, which does impact that's why we have such a big change in flows when there's rain and things like that. I mean, and we're going to regardless, because I mean, you think the river floods up right into some of our manholes, there's no way to prevent that, but if we could get that separated, it would help. But that we're starting to get into like a whole nother.
So it sounds to me, from what I've gathered, that I think the starting point is reusing the current building at the water treatment plant. And then looking at the solution for the wastewater treatment plant as well. Right, but is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
That I think that's, we have an existing building. That new equipment could provide us with a new, and then what upgrades we need for the wastewater treatment plant on top of that.
That kind of answer your question then, Nora, or we're just start or what?
it'll get us to look at pilot studies and start moving that funding.
I think from an engineering standpoint, that also makes the most sense from what I'm gathering from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't talk much about the wastewater plant, but yeah, what I would propose to do for the wastewater plant would be to come in and look at it from a capital planning standpoint. So I would want to come in and work with Steve to look at kind of a high level view. I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but I want to look at just kind of what processes you have, what are their capacities, and what does that look like for the overall plant from a capacity standpoint. And then we can look at also in the part of the study of this is, what is it going to discharge and what does that do to the plant from a capacity standpoint. In addition to that, what we want to look at is future master planning. So I want to take a look at the plant and say, okay, and obviously nobody has a crystal ball, but what could you anticipate in the future as being a future need that you would want or need to improve on at the wastewater plant? For example, a lab. For example, maybe a digester in the future, maybe another digester. There's no dewatering at the wastewater plant, maybe a dewatering facility. So looking at some of those things, you've done some improvements, that's great, but there may be a few other improvements that you may be looking at in 15 or 20 years or 5 years. So that's kind of what we'll do is kind of take a high level view of the existing process, just to kind of, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, because you spent a lot of money in already improving that plant. But as Steve mentioned, there's a concern for capacity and stuff, so we want to kind of take a high level view of that. And again, figure out what could be there in the future.
All right, budget, do we have anything budgeted for this study? We do,
We do, yes.
it's one thing I didn't look up.
Yeah, we hopefully, I mean, I don't have a final cost, but hopefully we'll have enough in this year's budget and then at least get us going in a direction where we can start planning and being proactive and trying to look into the future a little bit better.
All right.
I think we should expand the investigation, the study. Again, I've asked for 5 years, like, let's come up with an efficiency plan. Is it about selling more water? Is it about not selling, do we try to sell the Palmyra? Do we, try to have more business? Is it worth it to have the ethanol plant? These are the questions I want, the big picture thing, like what is the most efficient operation? Do we need, the lab or the water treatment plant running 24/7 with 3 shifts, or should we only producing this much water? Again, it's taking a bigger look at what we have and what we need to accomplish, rather than piecemealing all these things as we go down the line, and Eagle continues to add more and more garbage on top of us. But what is the overall plan? What's most efficient? We should sell this much water with the capacity that we have to produce this much water and treat this much water. I mean, wouldn't that make sense? So that we know how we want to grow or how we don't want to grow, or what's the most cost-effective way, the cost-effective solution to provide water and water treatment for the village. I've asked 3 previous administrators to say, let's get an overall solution. Let's get a long-term plan on what do we want to do, what's most efficiency at operating what we have and what we need to build. We're not even addressing infrastructure issues. We're not talking about pipes or sand cast mains or anything like that we have. This is looking at our plants. So what's most efficient, what's most optimal for us to say we should sell this much water, or we shouldn't, or we should try to,
I don't understand that part, Mike. It seems to me that we don't have a choice of how much water we sell, because we have the residents and we're not gonna just make 100 and we need 150. I don't quite understand.
It's like seeking out, do we, if that ethanol plant were to reopen, would we reinvest back into them and say, we can sell you this much water, or we can't, or Palmyra currently doesn't have water, much like Toledo sells water to their outlying areas. Could we sell areas of Palmyra which don't have city water? Could we expand the system and then capitalize on that? Would expanding that system, having more operations, more water, again, we built a water treatment plant to clean a lot more water. Would it be more efficient and cheaper in the long run to run it that way? Or should we not look at expanding, I guess, or growing the operation? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Who's the first to answer that?
That I would assume a engineering study would somehow give us the logistics of what is the most feasible, most cost effective operational way to do it. Should we only provide 1 million gallons of water a day with 2 operations or 2 shifts, or should we try to grow the system and sell more water?
I think a lot of those answers with our reliability study, right? I mean.
Yeah, so from an engineering standpoint, you want to look at it as you're not making a widget that you're trying to sell. Okay, so you're not making water to try to sell. You're not in the business of that. What you want to look at is what is the capacity of my water plant and what is the capacity of my wastewater plant, and how much room is there for economic growth. And when you look at that capacity and it tells you have X gallons available, and that tells you how much economic growth you can support. Okay, so it's the same thing, but you're looking at it from a different perspective. And when you do that, then it becomes a village decision or a governmental agency decision to say, we are going to leverage and invest on the funds that we have now in order to increase our capacity in the event that economic growth comes. Or you can look at it from the standpoint that when economic growth comes, we will set rates accordingly to be able to afford that expansion. Okay, so yes, that is part of a rate analysis, as part of a capacity analysis. Nora mentioned the reliability assessment, which is required by Eagle. That is part of that as well, because they look at your 5 and 20-year capacities. They look at your 5 and 20-year rate structure. They look at your 5 and 20-year plan for how much you can produce. What is the potential for
Yes,
other areas
it's
coming in?
long-term planning, because
Right.
we can't grow. I mean, if we continue to have a wastewater treatment plant rated at what it is, we cannot grow that by capacity rating. So that's a struggle. So again, you know, we talk about another water tower down on the west side of town. Would that water tower, again, would it be offset by cost by providing water to Palmyra? And they already have their sewer system. It's not coming back into our system. They have their own sewer system that would deal with that down the line. So again, it's what is the best bang for the buck? How do we go about doing it the most efficiently and cost effectively?
And that is a part of the reliability. Or it is,
Well, it's the combo.
oh, there's it sounds like it's not just the reliability, it's the combination, as you just said, James, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
So the sludge is one thing, wastewater plan is something else, and then the reliability analysis is
Right.
a third thing.
Right.
Correct.
Sounds like we need help with all of them.
And we're working on all of them.
Mhm.
They've begun working on the reliability study as well. Nora was able to get an extension from Eagle on that, so we're working on it. It just unfortunately takes some time and.
And that also helps us, again, for, like you mentioned, our rate structure. Again, we're paying off bonds on the water treatment plant next year. So that gives us a little bit of opportunity, because we hold off on that lab until we just break even. Unfortunately, you know, sucks to say it, but we don't see rates going down. So how do we offset those costs down the line? You know, if we pay off the plant over the next 2 years, the original water treatment plant, and then we look at funding a lab, we keep that rate structure hopefully somewhat similar, because we're just carrying that new debt on.
Mhm.
In the meantime, can we look into like a trailer or something? Maybe not a permanent solution, but I know they had working trailers out there that we might be able to provide as far as a break room goes. That is not,
Contractor's trailer.
yeah. they're
So I
contract-
believe, Steve, have you guys kind of rehabbed temporary the larger building for a break room area?
We have at this time, yes, we were able to work around that right now with UIS in there. That kind of has their, but that's they should be out of there in the next few weeks. So, yeah,
We have created a kind of temporary
Yeah,
break
we have.
room area for them that's outside of that lab building. It's, so in the larger building, there was some equipment removed there that's was no longer needed in the upgrades. So I would propose, I mean, unless you have, you definitely jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that'll work in the meantime until we get some permanent solutions out there.
Yeah, that'll work in the meantime. Like I say, we have several ideas, and like I say, we've done some things, Don and I, just based on his ability as a carpenter to do a few things out there. And we've done it fairly inexpensively, used the tools that we had available to us. But yeah, there are things that we've done that has made it considerably more livable, but as I say, you know, most places, locker room, showers, just basics on there. We've got a few ideas that we're looking at trying to basically rehab the second story down on there to get that. So as our administrator is not afraid to go down the second story, yeah, she went along in the building last time, but we're getting that cleaned up to where at least you'll be able to, you will feel safe walking in there.
Down in the basement.
Yeah.
And it's not a wants versus needs thing. I mean, because I've been out there and it's embarrassing, you know, to see the window air conditioner hanging up, you know, a hole in the wall and a 1970s screen door that slams shut. I mean,
No, they have.
you want to have that stuff in
have
your
the
house.
doors
It's literally
now they're
embarrassing.
fixed.
So,
We had Blissfield heating point, put in a nice heating air conditioning unit off the side. But we even discussed during the project of filling in the third floor down where the pumps were up to a certain level, maybe 6 or 8 feet with either stone or sand and leveling that off, because that's, you can still see from where the wet well was that they filled in with cement, but it's still seeping through. So bringing that up to where we can at least, like I say, make it livable and be able, not afraid to go down there and catch something. So that's kind of where we're at there. So like I say, we can work with the engineers here and get ideas, and they can throw ideas back, what they think will work, won't work, and we're willing to put in the time and labor, and we'll help out on that as well.
Any other questions for us, Pete?
No, you get questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for Steve, Nora, Peter? Lucas, maybe?
Well, quiet over there.
Lucas, you have to stand up.
Congratulations to those, Steve, by the way, thank you.
Yeah.
Hearing good things. We meet with Danielle and she's been sharing obviously at our meetings, and I just know that little bit of time I was out there, I was like, holy moly. Thanks. Well, it does.
All right, if we have nothing else, then everybody opposed to adjournment? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming. Thank you for
Thank
being
you very
here
much.
tonight.
Thank you.